The spaceport of Valakar Prime was a place that most humans avoided. It was not built for them. The air was thick with smoke from alien machines. The ground shook under the weight of massive starships, and the sky seemed forever dim, as though the sun itself feared to shine here. But Captain Darius Hale had no choice. His ship was damaged after an ambush by raiders, and this was the only station within reach. Darius stepped carefully through the crowds. He was tall for a human, with a soldier's posture, though his face carried the weariness of someone who had seen too many battles. Around him, alien eyes followed every step. The Thrinn were everywhere, towering reptilian figures with sharp ridges along their arms and glowing yellow eyes. They were known across the galaxy as proud warriors, brutal in combat and unforgiving to those they considered weak. To the Thrinn, humans were nothing more than a curiosity, a fragile species that relied too much on tools and technology. In their culture, respect was earned by strength and fearlessness. That was why the moment Darius entered the main plaza, whispers spread like fire. A lone human had walked into the heart of their domain without fear. "Look," one Thrinn warrior muttered, his voice rough like stone grinding against stone. "The prey walks among hunters," another hissed in amusement. "Does he think himself bold, or is he simply foolish?" Darius ignored them. His focus was on reaching the trade hall, where he hoped to negotiate for the parts his ship desperately needed. But before he could take another step, a squad of armored Thrinn guards surrounded him. Their spears gleamed with energy, humming faintly as they blocked his path. "You," their leader growled. "The human. The council wishes to see you." Darius kept his voice calm. "I don't seek trouble. I only need supplies. My ship is stranded." The guard laughed, a sound that echoed like a predator's snarl. "Then you are unlucky, human. On this world, you are the supply." He motioned with his spear, and the guards forced Darius to follow. The throne chamber of the Thrinn Council was carved into the heart of a volcanic mountain. Pillars of black stone rose high into the shadows, and molten rivers of lava glowed beneath grated floors. At the far end sat the counselors, massive Thrinn elders whose scales had darkened with age and whose eyes gleamed with cruel wisdom. But it was not them who drew Darius's attention. It was the figure seated in the center. She was different. Her scales shimmered with silver and green, catching the firelight in shifting patterns. Her crown-like horns curved elegantly back from her head. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and fierce. This was Princess Kalira, heir to the Thrinn throne and famed across their empire for her ruthlessness. The guards shoved Darius forward until he stood at the base of her throne. The chamber fell silent. Every alien eye was fixed on the human who dared to stand in their midst. Kalira rose slowly, her movements graceful yet dangerous, like a serpent preparing to strike. She descended the steps, her gaze never leaving Darius. When she reached him, she did not speak at first. Instead, she reached out with one clawed hand and seized his neck. The strength of her grip was undeniable. She could have crushed him with ease. She pulled him close, so close that he could feel her cold breath against his face. The hall held its breath, and then she hissed, her voice sharp enough to cut through the silence. "I could rip you apart, human," she whispered, "but tonight you live. Tell me, why should I not end you now?" Darius did not flinch. His instincts screamed at him to fight, to pull away, but he forced himself to remain still. Meeting her gaze, he spoke with steady resolve. "Because I am not afraid of you." A ripple of shock moved through the chamber. Thrinn warriors shifted, uncomfortably, some growling in disbelief. No human had ever spoken so boldly to their princess. Kalira's eyes narrowed. She studied him closely, as though trying to read the truth behind his words. Then slowly, She released his neck and stepped back. For the briefest moment, a faint smile touched her lips. Not of kindness, but of interest. Not afraid, she repeated softly. We will see. She turned to the council. This one is mine. Do not kill him yet. The councilors hissed in disapproval, but none dared challenge her command. Darius was dragged away to the holding chambers, his fate uncertain. Inside the stone cell, Darius leaned against the wall, replaying the moment in his mind. He knew he had only survived because Kaelira had chosen to spare him. But why? Was it amusement? Curiosity? Or did she see something more? He could not be sure. What he did know was this. He had just stepped into a game far larger than himself. And in a world where strength meant everything, he would need more than courage to survive. Far above, in the council hall, Kaelira stood at the window overlooking the volcanic plains. One of her advisors approached cautiously. Princess, the elder Thryn said, why do you keep the human alive? He is weak. His death would mean nothing. Kaelira's eyes remained fixed on the horizon. He looked at me without fear, she said quietly. Do you not see? That makes him different. That makes him dangerous. And for the first time in many years, the princess felt something she did not expect. Curiosity about a human. The cell where Darius was held was carved from dark stone, its walls rough and uneven. A faint red glow seeped through cracks in the floor, the light of molten rivers far beneath. Chains hung from the ceiling, though they were not used on him. The Thryn believed there was no need, no human could escape their fortress. Darius sat quietly on the cold ground, his mind steady. Fear pressed against him like a heavy weight, but he refused to bow to it. He had faced danger before, in battlefields where survival seemed impossible. This was no different. He told himself that as long as he kept his wits, there was hope. The heavy stone door opened, and 2 guards entered. They towered over him, their armor marked with scars of past wars. Without speaking, they motioned for him to rise. Darius stood and followed, his steps echoing through the winding corridors. He did not ask where they were taking him. He already had an idea. They brought him into the great arena of the Thryn. It was a vast circle of black stone, open to the sky, with thousands of alien eyes watching from tiered stands. The crowd roared with anticipation, their voices like thunder rolling through the air. For the Thryn, the arena was sacred, a place where honor was proven and weakness destroyed. At the center, Darius was forced to stand alone. His weapons and gear had been stripped from him. Around the ring, gates of iron stood closed, hiding whatever awaited within. High above, in a royal balcony, Princess Kaelira appeared. She wore armor that shimmered with green and silver, her presence commanding instant silence. When she spoke, her voice carried across the entire arena. Human, she declared, her golden eyes fixed on Darius. You stand before the Thryn. Your kind is frail, untested, unworthy of our notice. But you have shown something I cannot ignore. You looked upon me without fear. For that, you will be given a chance. A test of resolve. The crowd hissed and cheered. Many shouted for his blood. Others laughed at the thought of a human surviving even a single trial. Kaelira raised her arm, and one of the gates groaned, open. From the shadows within, a beast emerged. It was massive, its scaled body glistening with slime, its jaws lined with teeth that gleamed like daggers. Its claws dug into the stone as it prowled forward, releasing a deep, rumbling growl that shook the ground. Darius's heart pounded, but he forced himself to breathe calmly. He had no sword, no blaster, no shield, only his mind, his body, and his will to survive. The beast lunged. Darius rolled aside just in time, the creature's jaws snapping shut where he had stood. The crowd roared with laughter and cheers. To them, it was a spectacle. To Darius, it was life or death. He scanned the arena quickly. The ground was uneven, with cracks and loose stones. The beast was strong, but strength could also be turned into weakness. If he could not overpower it, he would outthink it. The creature lunged again. Darius grabbed a loose shard of rock, sharp enough to cut. As the beast's head swung toward him, he struck at its eye. The shard broke, but the beast roared in pain, rearing back. The crowd gasped at the boldness of the act. Darius darted toward the broken wall at the edge of the arena. There, lava's glow flickered through a crack. He tore a piece of metal from the wall's edge, its surface still warm. It was heavy, but it could serve as a weapon. The beast charged once more, faster, now its rage pushing it forward. Darius planted his feet, holding the metal shard like a spear. At the last second, he sidestepped and drove the shard into the beast's side. The impact was shallow, not fatal, but enough to slow it. The crowd was no longer laughing. Some shouted, in disbelief. A human was still alive, still standing. But the beast was far from defeated. With a furious bellow, it swung its tail, striking Darius across the chest. Pain exploded through his body as he crashed to the ground. For a moment, the world blurred. He struggled to rise, his breath ragged. From the balcony, Kalira watched intently. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes glimmered with interest. This was no ordinary human. The beast advanced, jaws opening wide. Darius forced himself to stand, his body aching. He had one last chance. He glanced at the molten cracks glowing beneath the stone. An idea formed. He backed toward the weakest part of the arena floor, taunting the beast with shouts and movement. Enraged, it charged headlong. At the final moment, Darius dove aside. The beast's weight slammed into the cracked stone. With a deafening roar, the floor collapsed, and the creature plunged into the molten river below. The arena fell silent. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the crowd erupted in chaos. Some screamed in rage that the beast had been defeated. Others shouted in awe. Never before had a human stood victorious in their sacred arena. Darius staggered to his feet, chest heaving. He was bruised, battered, and exhausted, but alive. He raised his head toward the balcony, meeting Kalira's gaze. The princess's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. She rose and addressed the crowd. "You see now," she said, her voice cutting through the noise. "This human is not like the others. He is clever. He is unyielding. He is dangerous." The counselors beside her exchanged uneasy glances. They had wanted his death. Instead, Kalira had turned his survival into a spectacle of strength. "His trial is not finished," Kalira continued. "There will be more tests, but know this, the human has earned the right to stand before us, not as prey, but as a challenger." The crowd roared again, this time not in laughter, but in recognition. Darius had done the unthinkable. He had survived the arena. As the guards escorted him back to his cell, Kalira's words echoed in his mind. Not prey, a challenger. It was only the beginning. But Darius understood the truth. In the eyes of the Thryn, he had taken his first step toward respect. And though his body ached with every step, a quiet fire burned in his heart. Humanity was not as weak as the galaxy believed, and he would prove it again and again if he had to. The cell was cold, but Darius barely noticed it anymore. His body ached from the battle in the arena, every muscle sore, but the pain was proof that he had survived. He leaned against the wall, his eyes closed, replaying every moment of the fight. The beast's roar, the cracking stone, the heat of the molten river below, it all stayed in his mind like fire. He knew the Thryn would not stop at one trial. This was only the beginning. To them, survival was not enough. He would need to prove himself again and again until they were either convinced of his strength or satisfied with his death. The heavy door opened. Kalyra herself entered, her armor glimmering faintly in the torchlight. The guards stayed outside, leaving her alone with him. Darius stood, his posture steady, though his chest still hurt from the beast's strike. "You live," Kalyra said simply. Her golden eyes studied him as though he were a puzzle. "Few creatures survive the Gorath beast, none without weapons." "I used what I had," Darius replied. His voice was calm. "Strength alone doesn't win every battle." A faint smile touched her lips. "That is the way of humans, is it not? Always relying on tricks, on tools, on cleverness." "Cleverness kept me alive," Darius said. He met her gaze without flinching. "Would you have preferred I stood, still, and let it kill me?" Her smile faded, replaced by a look of curiosity. She stepped closer, circling him slowly like a predator measuring prey. "Most humans beg. You do not. Most humans tremble. You stand. Tell me, Darius Hale, what is it that drives you? What gives you the courage to defy me? To face death without fear?" Darius thought for a moment. "Humans don't fight only to survive. We fight because of what comes after. We fight for tomorrow, for hope, for those who cannot fight for themselves. That is what makes us strong." For the first time, Kalyra seemed unsettled. His words did not match the image her people held of humans as weak and desperate creatures. She looked at him with narrowed eyes, as though trying to decide whether he spoke truth or illusion. "Hope," she repeated softly, almost tasting the word. "A fragile thing, yet perhaps more dangerous than strength." She turned sharply and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she paused. "Rest, human. Tomorrow your test continues. Survive again, and perhaps I will believe these words of yours." The door shut, and Darius was left alone. He sat slowly, his thoughts racing. He knew Kalyra was not his enemy in the simple sense. She was something more complex, an obstacle, a judge, perhaps even a chance for understanding. But he also knew she was dangerous. One mistake, one sign of weakness, and she would end him without hesitation. Far above the cells, in the council chamber, the elders gathered around a great stone table. Their voices were sharp, filled with anger and suspicion. "The princess risks too much," one elder growled. "A human is not worthy of our trials." "Yet he lives," another said, his voice low. "And the people have seen it. Already whispers spread. They call him clever, resilient. Some even call him a warrior." The first elder slammed his clawed fist against the table. "Dangerous whispers. If the people believe humans are strong, it weakens the foundation of our rule. We built our empire on the truth that only the Thrinn are worthy of respect." "And what if that truth is no longer safe to speak?" another counselor asked. "The galaxy changes. Other empires rise. If humans can stand against us, then perhaps we must consider—" "Silence!" the elder snapped. "The princess toys with fire. This human must die before the people believe too deeply." In the shadows, Kalyra listened unseen. Her eyes burned with quiet defiance. She had chosen to keep Darius alive, and she would not allow the council to end him so easily. Still, she knew their patience would not last. She needed to see for herself what the human was truly capable of. That night, while the fortress slept, Darius was awakened by the faint scrape of metal. The cell door creaked open, and a figure stepped inside. It was not Kalyra this time, but another Thrinn, smaller, younger, dressed in simple armor. "Human," the stranger whispered. "You are in danger. The council wants your death. They fear you will inspire others." Darius sat up, studying the figure. "And you? Why tell me this?" The young Thrinn hesitated. Because I have seen enough wars to know strength when I see it. You fight not with claws or blades, but with will. Perhaps we need that. Before Darius could respond, the stranger slipped away into the night, leaving only questions behind. The next day, the arena was prepared again. This time, the challenge was different. Not a beast, but a puzzle of traps, spinning blades, collapsing floors, and fire bursting from hidden vents. The trial was designed to test agility, intelligence, and endurance. The crowd filled the stands once more, eager to see if the humans' luck had run out. Kalira stood at the balcony, her eyes fixed on him. Darius entered the trial with steady steps. Every sound, every shift of stone, every flicker of flame, he noticed it all. The traps were deadly, but they followed patterns. Patterns could be broken. He moved carefully at first, watching the rhythm of the blades before slipping through. He used pieces of fallen stone to jam gears, slowing mechanisms just enough to pass. He studied the vents, timing his movements between bursts of fire. Every step forward was a battle of patience and nerve. The crowd, at first mocking, grew quiet. Their jeers turned to murmurs, then to gasps. The human was not running blindly. He was thinking, adapting. At the final stretch, the floor gave way, leaving only a narrow path across burning lava. Darius steadied his breath, then moved with determination. Step by step he crossed, the heat blistering but his will unbroken. When he reached the end, he stood tall, refusing to collapse even though his body screamed for rest. The arena erupted in noise. Some shouted in fury that he had lived. Others cried in amazement. Kalira raised her hand and silence fell. She looked down at Darius, her expression unreadable. "You endure," she said, her voice carrying across the stands. "Not with strength of body, but with strength of mind. You are unlike any human I have known." Darius met her gaze, his voice steady. "Perhaps it is time you learn what humans truly are." The crowd stirred again, sensing something more than a trial had just taken place. In that moment, it was not only Darius being tested, it was the idea of humanity itself. Far beyond the arena, in the hidden halls of the fortress, unseen eyes watched. Rivals of the Thrinn, enemies from distant stars, had learned of the human in the trials. And they whispered among themselves, if one human could stand against the Thrinn, perhaps humanity was not to be ignored. The shadow of greater conflict loomed. The fortress of the Thrinn was never quiet. The sound of molten rivers below, the grind of machines above, and the echo of soldiers marching through stone corridors filled every corner. Yet on this night, something was different. The air felt heavier, as though the mountain itself held its breath. Darius sensed it in his cell. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling of rough stone, his mind restless. The trials had proven he could endure, but he knew his fate was still uncertain. Kalira saw something in him, but the council wanted him dead. Survival would mean more than passing tests. It would mean choosing the right allies at the right time. A distant boom shook the walls. Dust rained from the ceiling. Darius sat up, sharply. Another explosion followed, closer this time. Shouts echoed through the corridors, panicked, urgent. The fortress was under attack. The door burst open. 2 guards rushed in, weapons drawn, but not at him. They looked past him, their reptilian eyes wide with alarm. "The Veer!" one growled. "They have breached the outer wall!" The Veer. Darius knew the name. A rival alien empire, cold and merciless, known for their machines of war. If they were attacking here, it meant the conflict was larger than he imagined. Before the guards could react further, Kalira stormed into the cell. She wore light battle armor, her silver-green scales catching the glow of the torches. A curved blade hung at her side, its edge humming faintly with energy. "Human," she snapped. "You come with me. Darius rose quickly. I thought I was your prisoner. Her golden eyes burned with fire. Now you are a soldier. Fight or die with the rest. She turned and strode into the hall, expecting him to follow. And he did. The fortress was chaos. The great gates had been torn apart by massive war machines, their metallic bodies glowing with red light. The Vare soldiers poured in like a tide of shadows. Tall, insect-like creatures with jagged armor and weapons that spat streams of fire. The Thryn warriors fought back with spears and blasters, their hisses and roars filling the air. Darius and Kaelira emerged onto the balcony overlooking the main courtyard. Below, the battle raged fiercely, the ground littered with smoke and sparks. Kaelira drew her blade, her voice sharp. You know war, human. You survived the arena with mind, not muscle. What would you do here? Darius scanned the battlefield quickly. The Vare were pressing hard, their machines crushing everything in their path. The Thryn fought with courage, but they attacked head-on, losing soldiers against the machine's heavy armor. You're fighting them the wrong way, Darius said. The machines are strong, but they're slow. Force them into the lava channels. Make the ground fight for you. Kaelira frowned, then considered his words. It could work, but only if we strike fast. Then let's move, Darius said, firmly. Together they descended into the courtyard where the clash of steel and fire shook the air. Kaelira fought with deadly grace, her blade cutting arcs of light as she struck down Vare soldiers. Darius fought differently, dodging, striking only when it mattered, using the battlefield itself as his weapon. He shoved enemies toward crumbling. Stone ledges tricked them into stepping on unstable ground and seized fallen weapons to use against their owners. At first, the Thryn warriors sneered at the sight of a human fighting beside their princess. But when they saw how his tactics turned the battle, their sneers turned to shouts of encouragement. Push them back, Darius shouted, his voice carrying above the chaos. Force them to the molten channels! Kaelira's eyes flickered toward him as she cut down another enemy. She had expected him to cower, to follow her orders silently. Instead, he commanded, and her soldiers obeyed without hesitation. Strange, she thought, that his words could move them so quickly. The tide of battle began to shift. Vare machines, heavy and unyielding, found themselves dragged toward cracks in the ground where glowing heat pulsed below. With well-placed strikes and desperate maneuvers, the Thryn pushed them over the edge. The molten rivers swallowed the machines whole, their shrieks of metal drowned in fire. Still, the fight was far from over. A massive Vare warlord strode into the courtyard, towering above the others, its armor thick as stone. It carried a weapon that fired searing blasts, tearing through walls with every shot. The Thryn faltered. Even Kaelira hesitated as the warlord advanced, its shadow falling across them. Darius stepped forward, breathing hard but steady. You can't kill that thing with strength, he said quickly. But maybe with a trap. Kaelira's eyes narrowed. What do you suggest? Bring it to the central pit, Darius said, pointing to the massive crack in the courtyard where lava glowed faintly beneath. I'll draw it in. You strike when the ground breaks. Kaelira studied him for a heartbeat, then gave a sharp nod. Do it! Darius sprinted across the courtyard, weaving through debris as the warlord turned its burning weapon on him. Fire scorched the stone just behind his heels. He grabbed a broken spear and hurled it at the creature's head. Not enough to wound, but enough to draw its focus. Come on, you monster, he muttered. Follow me. The warlord bellowed in rage and charged. Its heavy steps cracked the stone beneath. Darius led it straight to the central pit, his heart pounding. He stopped at the edge, the heat burning his skin, and waited until the last possible second before diving aside. The warlord stumbled onto the weakened ground. Kaelira leapt from above, her blade flashing. With a single strike, she split the stone further, and the ground gave way. The warlord plunged into the molten river below, vanishing in a burst of flame. The courtyard erupted with cheers. The Thryn soldiers roared in triumph, their voices shaking the walls. For the first time, their victory had been led not by brute force, but by strategy. Kalyra stood beside Darius, her chest heaving from the battle. She looked at him, her golden eyes shining not with scorn but with respect. "You led my soldiers," she said slowly. "You commanded them as if they were your own." "I only showed them a different way to fight," Darius replied. His voice was tired but steady. "Strength is not only in muscle. It's in the mind. It's in unity." Kalyra studied him for a long moment, then gave a slight nod. "Perhaps you are right, human. Perhaps there is more to you than weakness." Around them, the fortress burned, but the Veir had been driven back. The battle was not the end, it was the beginning, for in the shadows beyond Valakar Prime, other enemies were watching, and now they had seen it, a human, standing beside a Thryn princess, leading warriors to victory. The galaxy would not forget this night. The battle was over, but the fortress of the Thryn still smoldered. Broken machines of the Veir lay half buried in molten cracks, their twisted frames glowing with heat. The air carried the sharp smell of smoke and ash. Warriors walked among the ruins, their armor scarred, their faces weary but proud. For the first time, they spoke of a human not as prey, but as a fighter. Darius Hale's name passed through the fortress in whispers. Some called him clever, others called him bold. A few even called him dangerous. But in the high council chamber, the whispers turned into anger. The elders sat around the great stone table, their golden eyes burning. One slammed his clawed hand down. "This cannot continue," he growled. "The human poisons our people with illusions of strength." "He saved the fortress," another said reluctantly. "Without him, the Veir would have broken our defenses." "And that is exactly the danger," the first replied. "If one human can win battles among us, what will the people believe? That humans are our equals? That they deserve respect? It cannot be allowed." Kalyra sat at the head of the chamber, silent, her expression unreadable. The elders turned to her. "Princess," one said sharply, "it is time. End the humans. Life before his shadow grows longer." Kalyra's golden eyes narrowed. She thought of Darius in the arena, standing bloodied but unbroken. She remembered him leading her soldiers in the courtyard, his voice steady even as fire fell around them. He was unlike any human she had ever seen. Killing him now felt not like strength but weakness. "No," Kalyra said at last. "He has earned the right to live." The council hissed with fury. "You defy tradition. You risk everything for a single human." Kalyra stood, her tall frame casting a long shadow across the chamber. "Tradition kept us blind. Strength is not only in claws and blades. He showed us another kind of power, the power of mind, of unity. If we kill him now, we prove ourselves cowards." Her words echoed through the hall. Some of the elders looked uneasy, but others were filled with rage. "You would betray your own people for him." One spat. "I would protect my people by learning from him," Kalyra answered firmly. The council chamber erupted in shouts. Some demanded her removal, others whispered of treason. But Kalyra did not flinch. She had made her choice. That night, Darius was summoned to the throne chamber. He entered carefully, uncertain of what awaited him. Kalyra stood at the center, her armor still bearing marks of battle, her gaze fixed on him. "You know the council wants your death," she said, without delay. "They fear you more than they fear the Veir." "I'm not surprised," Darius replied. "To them, I am proof that humans aren't as weak as they believe." Kalyra stepped closer. Her voice was low but sharp. "Do you realize what you have done? By surviving, by fighting, you have changed the way my people look at you. To some you are an ally, to others a threat, and to me," She paused, her eyes burning into his. "You are a choice I must make." Darius did not look away. "And what is that choice?" Her clawed hand rose suddenly, gripping his neck as she had the first time they met. The chamber guards stiffened, unsure of her intent. She pulled him closer, her breath cold against his face. "I could end you now," she hissed. "One strike, and your story ends here." The silence was heavy, every eye on them. But then her grip loosened. She turned to the counselors who had gathered in the shadows, her voice ringing across the chamber. "No," Kalyra declared. "This human does not die. I claim him as an ally of the Thryn. Whoever challenges this, challenges me." The chamber erupted in outrage. Elders shouted, soldiers hissed, the sound like thunder in stone halls. But Kalyra stood tall, unyielding, her claws still resting against Darius's throat as if to remind them she chose his fate, not them. One elder slammed his staff against the floor. "This is madness! You risk our empire for a fragile creature!" Kalyra's eyes blazed. "Madness would be ignoring the strength before us. He fought when others fled. He led when others faltered. He stood against death and did not bend. Tell me, which of you would have done the same?" Her words cut through the chamber. None answered. Slowly, Kalyra released Darius and stepped back. The message was clear. She had made her decision. In the days that followed, the fortress changed. Some Thryn avoided Darius, their eyes filled with suspicion. Others watched him with cautious respect. A few even trained with him in the courtyards, testing his strange human tactics. Kalyra visited often, speaking with him late into the nights. She asked questions about humanity, about their worlds, their wars, their dreams. Darius answered honestly, his words simple but filled with conviction. He spoke of human history, of struggles endured, of victories won not by power, but by persistence. "You fight for tomorrow," Kalyra said one night, repeating his earlier words. Strange. The Thryn fight for honor. The Vair fight for conquest. But humans fight for hope. "That's what makes us dangerous," Darius replied. "We never stop believing in what could be." Kalyra studied him quietly, her thoughts hidden. But while Kalyra and Darius built an uneasy alliance, the council moved in secret. Not all elders would accept the princess's choice. In shadowed chambers, they whispered of betrayal. "If she will not end the human, we must," one elder said. "He must not leave this fortress alive." "And if the people resist?" another asked. "Then we remind them who truly rules. A human will not decide the fate of the Thryn. Plans were laid. Assassins were prepared. The storm of politics was turning into something darker." One evening, Darius stood on the balcony overlooking the volcanic plains. The sky was painted in red and gold from the setting sun. Kalyra joined him, silent at first. Together they watched the horizon. "You know they will not stop," Darius said quietly. "The council will keep trying to end me." Kalyra's jaw tightened. "Then let them try. I will stand between you and their blades." Darius turned. To her. "That choice may cost you everything." Her eyes met his, fierce and unyielding. "Then let it cost me. I will not lead by fear alone. I will lead by truth. And the truth is that you have shown me a strength my people need." For a moment, the silence between them carried more weight than any battle. Two worlds, once enemies, now bound by a fragile thread of trust. But in the shadows behind them, unseen figures watched. The council's betrayal was near. The fortress of the Thryn stood tall against the volcanic winds, its towers glowing faintly in the evening haze. From a distance, it looked unshakable. Yet inside, tension grew like cracks in stone. The battle with the Vare had been won, but a new conflict brewed within the walls. Darius Hale walked through the training grounds, sparring with two young Thryn warriors. Sweat ran down his face, but his movements were sharp, his eyes steady. The warriors laughed in surprise when he disarmed one with a clever twist, sending the blade clattering to the ground. "You fight with tricks," one hissed. "Sometimes," Darius replied, breathing hard. "Tricks save lives when strength alone is not enough." The warriors nodded, not with scorn, but with respect. Slowly, one step at a time, he was earning his place. But in the shadowed halls of the council, darker plans unfolded. The elders gathered in secret, their golden eyes glowing under torchlight. "The princess has lost her mind," one said bitterly. "She protects the human as if he were one of us." "She risks the balance of our empire," another growled. "Already soldiers whisper his name. Soon they will look to him, not us." A third slammed his staff against the ground. "Then the solution is simple. The human must die. Tonight." Assassins were summoned. Blades were sharpened. The council's betrayal was set. That night the fortress was quiet, its courtyards lit by the red glow of lava rivers below. Darius stood on the balcony of his chamber, staring at the stars. For the first time since he was captured, he felt a strange peace. The door behind him slid open. A faint shift in the air told him he was not alone. He turned just in time to see the glint of a blade. The assassin struck. Darius rolled aside, the blade cutting into the stone where he had stood. He grabbed a chair, swinging it to block the second strike. Sparks flew as steel met wood. He shouted, his voice echoing down the hall. Guards rushed forward, but more assassins poured in, their movements silent and deadly. Kaelira arrived like a storm. Her roar shook the chamber as she drew her twin blades, cutting through the assassins. With precise fury, sparks lit the dark as steel clashed with steel. "Cowards!" she shouted. "You dare betray your own princess?" One assassin sneered. "We serve the Empire, not your weakness." The battle inside the chamber was fierce. Darius fought with everything he had, using speed, wit, and desperation. He disarmed one assassin with a broken spear, then turned the weapon back against him. Kaelira fought beside him, her movements graceful and brutal, every strike a reminder of why she was feared among her people. When the last assassin fell, silence returned, but not peace. The council could no longer hide. At dawn, Kaelira stormed into the grand hall, dragging the surviving assassin by the throat. Darius walked beside her, his clothes torn, his face marked with cuts but his eyes burning with defiance. The council rose in anger, but Kaelira's voice thundered across the chamber. "You sent your blades against me, against him, against the truth," the elders hissed. But she silenced them with a strike of her sword against the stone floor. Sparks leapt into the air. "Look at him!" she cried, pointing to Darius. "A human, small and fragile, yet he fought beside me against death itself. He saved our fortress. He stood against assassins when even your guards failed. Tell me, which of you can claim the same honor?" The hall fell silent. The warriors lining the chamber looked at Darius, then at their princess. For the first time, doubt spread through the ranks of the council. One elder rose, his voice shaking with anger. "He is not one of us. He is a shadow, a danger. If you raise him up, you shame our people." Kaelira stepped forward, her golden eyes blazing. "No, if we kill him, we shame ourselves. Strength is not only in blood, strength is in will, in heart, in the courage to rise when all hope is lost. That is what he carries. That is what we must learn." Her words echoed in the hall. Slowly, one by one, warriors began to lower their heads in agreement. The tide was shifting, but the council would not yield so easily. The eldest among them slammed his staff down. "Then let it be decided by trial," he roared. "If this human is truly strong, let him prove it before all. One final test. If he fails, he dies. If he succeeds, then perhaps he earns his place, the crowd murmured. Kalira's jaw tightened. But before she could answer, Darius stepped forward. "I'll face it," he said firmly. Kalira turned to him, her voice low. "You don't have to—" "Yes, I do," he interrupted. "Not just for me. For humans. For you. For every warrior here who's watching. If I back down now, they'll never believe." Kalira studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded, her expression fierce with pride. The trial was held in the great arena where Darius had first faced death. Thousands filled the stands, their roars shaking the stone. At the center stood Darius, armed only with a spear and his determination. From the gates emerged his opponent, a massive war beast, chained and armored, its scales glinting under the fiery light. The crowd gasped at its size, its claws like curved swords. The chains were released. The beast roared. The trial began. Darius moved quickly, dodging the first strike that split the ground like an earthquake. He rolled, stabbed with the spear, and barely avoided being crushed by the beast's tail. The crowd shouted, some cheering, some jeering. Kalira watched from above, her claws gripping the railing, her heart pounding with every move. The beast struck again and again. Darius was thrown across the arena, the spear snapping in half. He staggered to his feet, blood running down his face, his breath ragged. The crowd thought it was over, but Darius did not stop. He grabbed the broken spear, turned its jagged edge into a weapon, and climbed onto the beast's back. It thrashed and roared, but he held on with every ounce of strength. With a final cry, he drove the spear into the creature's neck. The beast collapsed, shaking the arena with its fall. Dust rose. Silence followed. Then the crowd erupted in thunderous roars. The human had won. Darius stood in the center of the arena, battered but unbroken. He raised the broken spear high. The warriors of the Thryn roared his name. Even those who doubted him bowed their heads in respect. Kalira stepped into the arena, her golden eyes glowing with pride. She stood beside him, her voice carrying, across the crowd. Today, a human fought not as prey, but as one of us. Let all remember this day. Strength is not bound by race, by blood, or by old laws. Strength lives wherever courage rises, and today it rose in him. The crowd roared, louder, shaking the very walls of the fortress. The council could no longer deny the truth. The human had earned his place. That night, under the stars, Kalira stood beside Darius on the balcony once more. "You changed everything," she said softly. "Not just for me, for my people, for yours." Darius smiled faintly. "No, we changed everything, together. And as the stars burned above, two worlds once divided now shared the same sky, their future forever changed by the strength of one human and the choice of one princess."